So we're going to talk about that and kind of how it's aligning with the market and the procurement world. So first of all, I'm Nathan Adams. I'm the vice president over carrier management and procurement. So my team does a lot of the supporting and the bid work here for Uber Freight. And I also have Kate and Chris with me here from our consulting team and also our technology team. And so I'm going to kick it over to you guys to introduce yourself real quick before we jump in. So I'll kick it to Kate first, if you just want to give a brief introduction.
Sure. Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kate Anderson. I've been with Uber Freight for 7 years in our consulting team, primarily focused on truckload procurement, running RFPs, RFP and procurement strategy, procurement support, and carrier management. Prior to that, I was with WestRock for 10 years in their logistics procurement department, managing their RFP and procuring for truckload and intermodal. And then prior to WestRock, I was with Knight Transportation for a couple of years in operations.
All right.
Great.
Thank you,
Kate.
Chris?
Hey, everybody. My name is Chris Chmielewski. I'm a senior product manager here at Uber Freight. I've been with the company for about 7.5 years, have had the chance to work in a lot of different areas of our technology stack here at Uber Freight, but recently been focusing on our procurement software, in particular Uber Freight Exchange Contract, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. Prior to my time at Uber, I worked in technology consulting. And look forward to chatting with everybody more today.
All right, thanks, Chris. And as we kind of mentioned, our agenda is going to start out with kind of the current state of procurement, and then we're going to move on to some of the challenges we see, and then the tech unlocks. And then of course we're going to get to the 5 best practices, which is the title of the tech talk today. So again, thanks for joining us. If you just want to go ahead and hit the next slide there. There it goes. All right, so just a little bit about Uber Freight. So obviously we're part of one of the world's leading global tech companies, wholly owned by Uber. As you can see, kind of the flywheel there, you're going to get the rides everyone's familiar with, Uber Eats and delivery that everybody's familiar with, and then you have Uber Freight. Where we really fit in is kind of that third leg to the stool of the broader Uber company. So we're super excited to have such an awesome parent company that supports a lot of what we do here at Uber Freight. So high level, just more diving into Uber Freight, we have about $20 billion in freight under management that's flowing through our platform, which encompasses about 6,000 customers. And this is both on the 3PL side and on the transportation management side. We're handling about 1.8 billion transactions through our TMS annually, 120,000 plus carriers, and 24 million shipments totally. And then we've calculate about 1.5 billion in annual savings that we have either through technology initiatives, engineering studies, procurement events. And so that's a lot of the value that we bring to our customers. So just a very large network that we're able to gain a lot of insights on. And obviously with this much going on in the procurement world, with this much spin, we get a lot of insights there too. So we're excited to share those with y'all as well today. So we can go to the next slide. Apologize for the slides not moving, everybody.
Nathan, it does look like it may have moved on our side.
Okay.
So it might be a delay on your side, but we are seeing the truckload demand and supply chart.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Yeah, it didn't flip on my screen, so maybe just an interface issue. So so if you're looking at the demand slide, I mean, the big takeaway here is that supply has really outpaced demand for well over 2 years, right? And so I think we've all felt that in the market, to where there's much more capacity than there is freight, right? Which is why you start to have a kind of a depressed freight market where rates have been dropping, right? And this kind of shows it, right? So rates really aren't going to start making a big change until we start to get some of that supply out of the market. Now, some of the supply has exited, whether it's just been through bankruptcies, consolidations. There was a large entry after COVID when the rates really spiked up there. So a lot of folks decided to jump in and get into the business, right? And a lot of them are still in it. But unfortunately, that drives that oversupply in the marketplace, which depresses the rates for the carriers. And so we're starting to see that slip out. I'd say it's slowly moving. It's not like we don't see a very large event that is going to flip the tide on that, but we are seeing some pressure in procurement events and just in the industry in general. Still waiting to see if that's going to be seasonal or if it's going to hold true, but yeah. So we're very closely watching these market indexes, right? Because this directly affects kind of that procurement strategy. So I'll click to the next slide here. So hopefully I can see it on my side. Okay, got it. So this is just showing some of the key performance indicators that we measure to kind of continue to tell that story of the market, right? So again, with that oversupply in the marketplace, really bringing those, depressing those rates. You also have kind of the inverse effect on, routing guides are performing really well. Check call compliance is performing really well. Inflation of where primary carriers reject and it goes to secondary carrier, very, very low, right? So you have a lot of the key KPIs are kind of tracking that market index where, a lot of carriers are performing well because the freight is critically important to them. They want to keep it, especially when it can be hard to get in this current environment. Okay, next slide as it changes over. Also very similar story on service, just on-time delivery, right? We've seen that increase over the years as in months as we've been tracking this, right? So this also kind of correlates that broader market picture. So everybody's wanting freight. That's going to drive up your service metrics, drive up your KPIs. The oversupply is going to depress the rates, and that's kind of where we're sitting in a lot of the market, right? And I know we're all kind of waiting for it to turn and cautiously waiting to see what's going to happen next year. So next, I'll give just a few procurement insights we have from our team that we see. So again, my team does close to a couple hundred bids a year in conjunction with Kate's team on the consulting side. So we just get a ton of great insights from those events, and what we're really seeing is bid activity it continues to be strong, right? We still are seeing folks coming and bidding out full network RFPs. I'd say a lot of folks kind of held with the traditional timeline this year. Some folks did end up moving their timeline up to try to capture the last bit of what they felt was a kind of a depressed market. So we're really seeing bid activity has not let off the gas, so to say. So there's still a lot of demand. We still see a lot of not only the network bids, but a lot of the mini bids that is kind of upkeeping and repairing that network as we go. Just from a strategic trend, they're starting to plan for a market that's going to tighten up. A lot of our shippers are starting to say, okay, how do I leverage in my incumbents in my network to keep them whole? How do I protect service if rates do start to increase and it gets tougher to find capacity, right? So they're starting to prep for that, moving more towards assets in some cases at their larger facilities. But you can tell that the folks are kind of, not like crazily, I'd say, right into the store buying milk and bread, but they're starting to prep a little bit on, hey, the market may get a little tighter, and we've seen that in the rates as well. Just from a carrier behavior, the carriers continue to cast a wide net. Again, they're still really hungry for freight volume. So they're bidding on a lot of freight across the bids. When it gets tighter, they may carve out 20% of a bid, 30% of a bid that they really want to focus on. When it's less demand, it's a broader net, which is what we're still seeing. They are starting to get some traction on price, I'd say. We've had in some cases year over year savings that the shippers have taken. So the carriers they're really starting to try to get price to stick. I think the economics have kind of fallen out to where they're just going to need a certain rate to operate, right? And we've had some conversations with some large carriers that are really trying to get that rate to stick, and successful in some cases and some and not, right? And then just overall on pricing, I touched on that. Even though we're starting to see the savings percentage like degrade a little bit, there's still savings to be had, right? So we're still seeing low single digit saves in a lot of the bids, and that's kind of comping over the past year as well. So still fairly soft with some signs of tightening if I was to kind of sum it all up there from a market perspective. Okay, so what I think we should do next, maybe discuss a little bit about just what it looks like from a traditional procurement standpoint. And a lot of the research that Chris and the tech team have done is just an awesome amount of the data they brought to it. So Chris, I'm going to kick it your way and let you just kind of talk about some of the challenges that we see.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nathan. So hey, everybody, excited to talk through a lot of insights that we've gathered from just numerous conversations with shippers who are looking to up-level their procurement. I think something we've said a lot, but is very common still today is we discovered there's a lot of shippers in the industry who are still managing their procurement process the same way they have been for many, many years. In a lot of cases, they're still leveraging email and Excel to get through their mini bids or RFP events and even spot bids. And ultimately what this leads to is a lot of back and forth communication threads with carriers over email, a lot of copying and pasting of data across systems to try to create that consolidated view, all of which is highly inefficient. Aside from just this operational burden that we hear from shippers, running bids without technology does cause data issues for them. I just mentioned this, but if you have most of your processes offline and through these offline channels, it makes it really difficult to look back at the year, see how you performed, even look at historical trends over time to keep a good pulse on your network. On top of that, it makes it really difficult to benchmark and understand how you performed and what you should be striving for in a given procurement period, which is where I think technology can really help make shippers make more informed decisions. The last thing I want to speak to a little bit as well is, shippers who are looking for technology in the market now, they really want to make sure they can get that data back into any other system that they have. So looking for integrated solutions, thinking about how to extract procurement insights, get that back into the TMS. Once again, so you have that information stored, centralized, and can continue to refine and iterate and improve on the procurement process going forward. And then the last thing I want to hit on, just in terms of challenges, and it's been a little bit easier the last couple of years, as Nathan mentioned, given the softer market that we've been in. And Kate will talk about this a little bit in the upcoming section as well, but really think about how to lean into your carrier network, identify areas where you could benefit from more carriers or additional capacity on lanes is another common area where we hear customers looking for help, seeking guidance, and trying to understand where can I really build up my carrier relationships and make smarter decisions going forward. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Kate, who's going to start talking through some of the top procurement best practices as we go into the new year, and we'll continue the conversation there.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to go through some of the top 5 best practices for procurement in 2025. They're shown here on the screen, but we'll go ahead and dive into it. So before you set your procurement strategy or network RFP strategy, it's really important to evaluate the state of your network and understand how your network is performing and where there are gaps and obstacles. And also understand the current state of the freight market and where the market is headed to really help define your future procurement strategy. Like Nathan said, as touched on, we've been in this very loose market right now with the anticipation that it's going to turn at some point, and we're just not sure when that point is and how steep that point will be. But once you understand where we are in the market and then where that future market might be, set goals and objectives prior to any type of procurement event. And you can only set those goals if you have a good understanding of your current network. Which lanes are performing well from a service perspective, which lanes are underperforming. Utilize a benchmark consortium like DAT or Uber Freight and benchmark rates to understand where your network may be over market, and dig into those areas because there could be some valid reasons why they might be over market, right? Some lanes maybe have higher rates due to the requirements on the lane, or it might be a very high profile customer with strict delivery requirements. Look at lanes that might be under market that are currently meeting your service requirements and determine if those lanes you should pre-negotiate and leave those out of the bid and negotiate those with your incumbent carrier. And Chris will get into that here in a minute. just you really want to take the time to identify key areas of your network that need attention and may benefit from additional capacity offerings. So identify any modal conversions, lanes that could convert to intermodal, areas of the network that have a lot of density within 150, 200 miles that could be suited for dedicated. And you'll want to do this a couple of months ahead of going to market or a large commercial RFP event to understand if it's a viable potential solution. You want to make sure that the intermodal lanes can meet transit times. We've had some shippers that send out RFIs to intermodal providers ahead of the bid to understand their services, to share what lanes they might convert, and determine if the intermodal providers can meet their requirements prior to going to bid. So anywhere you can diversify your modal mix should be assessed, and this is a really good time to assess so you're not heavily reliant on one mode if you don't have to be, right? Especially headed into 2025 and a potential turn in the market. I think when you're evaluating the state of your network, you also want to understand your lane mix, your higher volume lanes, your low volume lanes, hard to serve lanes, seasonal lanes that might have high spikes during the portion of the year. And you really want to probably sit down and categorize those because not every lane category will have the same strategy. And you'll want to lay those out and discuss and brainstorm your bidding and your carrier strategy around each of those lane segments. You'll also want to evaluate your carrier's performance, and you'll really want to understand before you go into a bid who have been the strong performers, where are the opportunities to add new carriers and form those additional relationships. This is a really good time to add new carriers and get them ingrained in your network before the market turns. Evaluate your carrier roster and how many carriers are on that, and is that the right number of is that the right size for your network? Or you might be surprised. You might have a long tail that you didn't even realize that grew, and have carriers only hauling 12 loads or less a year, and then just determining if that carrier list should be reduced. And as you're evaluating your carrier performance and their spend and their volume, you really want to identify which carriers to grow, maintain, reduce. You may have some carriers that grew too much in the network and we need to pare them down. Which new carriers to add. Look to see if you're ready to assess any alternative fuels, electric trucks, where in your network you may have opportunity to do so. And if you don't know which carriers provide those services or where there's a good fit, you can always issue an RFI to collect this type of information from your carriers. So that's a very important part, right? Understand the state of your network, understand where the market is today, where it's predicted to go, and then set goals and objectives and define strategies to meet those goals. And then align with both procurement and operational teams just to ensure you have one cohesive strategy that meets the needs of your network. So I think the next one, Chris is going to talk about having a multi-pronged procurement strategy.
Great, thanks, Kate. So I think the first thing I want to call out, and Kate mentioned this, but you really want to evaluate your network holistically. And as Kate mentioned, segment lanes, think about the amount of volume you're going to have on each one of those lanes. But also think about what role RFPs, mini bids, or spot channels will actually have within your network. So a really important tip is to think about some cutoffs that you may want to think about from a volume perspective in terms of which lane should actually make it onto the RFP. If you're only going to have a lane that's going to move 1 or 2 times a year, it might not be valuable to add that to the full RFP, and really think about which ones you want to focus on to get those locked in contract rates, and where spot may be a more efficient channel for you going forward. The other suggestion we have here is really thinking about your pre-negotiation strategy with your carriers. So take a look at your overarching network and think about, where have you had strong performing carriers? Where is there opportunity to potentially continue to re-engage with those top performing carriers? Have those discussions up front ahead of your procurement event, so you both can be on the same page going into the RFP season. Things that we recommend, obviously sitting down, talking to the carriers to review the metrics from the past 4 quarters, thinking about what the tender acceptance and service rates look like. Also review, what the rates were as a part of the previous RFP versus what actually ended up getting tendered out. So, compare your route guide versus actuals, and make sure that these carriers are able to hit those rates that they gave during the RFP season. And once again, you really want to make sure you build time into the RFP timeline up front so you have time to have these discussions. From there, take a look at your network and start to figure out what strategic adjustments you want to make going into your procurement events. Take a look at where there's opportunities to potentially add additional capacity, like we said, to close up gaps. And think about, once again, potential strategic discussions the other way around where you may want to even, reduce some of the capacity you have within your network, focusing on high performing carriers who are really giving you the best cost and service. And then the last piece is really making sure that as a team, as a company, you're aligned around the strategic objectives you have for each of those lanes. So once again, based on that lane segmentation, having a really clear goal for each of those, thinking about where you're really high service, high important lanes, and where you maybe want to try to optimize more for cost or savings. So this should all be working together, as a part of the holistic strategy, but really important to be thinking about each one of these components. I'm going to kick it back over to Kate, who's going to walk us through providing carriers with some historical data.
Great. Yeah, so another important aspect of the procurement process is it's the partnership with your carriers and being transparent with your carrier partners. Let them know when you're going to plan to go to market, how long rates will be effective. Ensure you have a carrier kickoff call prior to any large scale RFP event. That just explaining the goals that you're trying to achieve in your RFP, your operational requirements, your facility requirements. And prior to launching your bids, right, you want to ensure you have clean, accurate data and accurate shipment volumes, as accurate as you can, right? We know that the transportation and volumes fluctuate throughout the year, but spend the time to do data scrubbing and validations on zips, city names, mileages. And then we always recommend to provide at least 12 months of historical shipment data, or 6 months if that's a better depiction of your network, if you've had a lot of changes, and then annualize from there. And then work with your operations and your production planning teams and customer category teams to review the lanes and volumes, and they can help support and include any forecasted volume or any lanes that might be going away or decrease in volume, just to allow for carriers to provide the most competitive rates that they can and with their valid capacities. But having that thorough data cleansing and validation process and working across your cross-functional teams just eliminates the rebidding in the future or adjusting route guide volumes in the future. And it just goes a long way with the carrier partners. It's always very important to share if you have any seasonal trends, if you can share those by month or by quarter, just to show any volume fluctuations to help carriers understand the flows of your network. And then the last piece here is just providing critical lane detail requirements where it makes sense. So when you go to market or you're sourcing a lane, if there's any specific lane requirements that would really change the price or the carrier should know about. So number of drop trailers needed at the origin or the destination. If the lane requires a temp protector, hazmat drivers, if lanes are required to deliver at night, anything specific that carrier would need to know to service the lane successfully. And it just helps ensure you're receiving, one, accurate pricing, and then two, just helps minimize any award turnbacks and back-end work. Ideally, you just don't want any surprises to the carriers come implementation time. So just try to be as transparent as you can with those very specific lane requirements, just to help with minimize the work on the back end. And then the next slide, we're going to talk about establishing a route guide strategy and having a good reporting and metrics to track route guide compliance and have real-time reporting that gives your purchasing and operational teams visibility and really the ability to act and make changes quickly. And Chris mentioned this before. You want to, what are you going to go to bid with? Not every lane will have a route guide. You might decide that low volume lanes may not even have a route guide and will utilize a spot strategy. So you'll want to have a route guide strategy prior to going to your RFP scenario analysis and after you've assessed that current state of your network. But things to consider when developing your strategy is, right, factor in where you need asset-based capacity and where you can use 3PL capacity. Consider the number of carriers that you want to manage at the network and then also at that facility level too. And then consider what percentage of network you are targeting to keep with your incumbents, which goes back to your pre-negotiation strategy as well. You'll want to evaluate your incumbency at the network level, but probably also at that lane level. And you'll want to determine what does it mean to be an incumbent, right? Who are my incumbents prior to going to the RFP and scenario analysis? Basically, an incumbent should be someone that's hauling a good portion of the volume and they've met the service requirements on that lane and they have a good market competitive rate. And so once you have those RFP results back, you can play with the different iterations of incumbency with an RFP bid tool to evaluate the cost impact, or in other words, like the investment to partner with your incumbent carriers. And then to determine the types and mix of carriers to add to your network and where those carriers will play. You'll have your national. Are there any good regional carriers that fit into your facility network? Are there any small to niche carriers that will play in your network, and where will the 3PL providers play? And then evaluate which lanes will need backups. Not every lane may need a backup in your network. You may identify, it goes back to that lane segmentation, right? Look at your high critical lanes, your hard to serve lanes, higher volume lanes. Your equipment types, intermodal may need a truckload backup option. And then also take this time to evaluate other backup strategies, things like dynamic pricing or having assigned surge carrier or broker at your origin level to handle overflow freight. And then determine your route guide depth. So we talked about that a little bit. For your higher volume lanes, you may want to distribute the primary awarded volume across multiple carriers, not to overload one carrier, right? And then once you have that route guide strategy and you have, and you're going through implementation, this is where you really want to implement and report. So have an onboarding process for new carriers, or even existing carriers on new lanes. And whether that's sending the carriers an onboarding informational package or having a group carrier call to go over tendering processes, communication flows, freight payment, anything to influence a smooth transition during go live. And then leverage technology to manage the route guide and give visibility into route guide compliance. This is a very important part of the process, right? It's a very dynamic, fluid process. You want to develop a cadence to regularly publish scorecards at the carrier level and internally at the facility level, and evaluate things like the primary carrier acceptance, route guide leakage, basically what is the cost my route guide fails. What did I award versus what I actually shipped? So basically tracking metrics to ensure your network is performing to your plan. And then just have a regular cadence to review that reporting, and then identify immediate gaps and have a process within your teams to take action and resolve those gaps quickly and effectively with your carrier partners. And then lastly, leverage good technology and reporting. Just helps identify, like we talked before, those gaps, and leverage technology to run and execute mini bids to fix those gaps. And it helps remove manual processes that can really drain your carrier pricing teams and procurement teams. So the network, there will always be sourcing, and the network bid won't solve everything, and you're going to constantly have to use that reporting to identify opportunities and then leverage technology to help fix and fill those gaps with the mini bids, which Chris will get into next.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Kate talked a lot about technology just now. And I think one thing I want to underscore is it's really important to pick the right tool for your organization. We talk a lot about how technology can drive efficiencies and help you make smarter decisions, but also think about the different steps in the process and where technology can lean in. And it might not be a one-size-fits-all tool for every occasion. So definitely be mindful of that. Just starting out, once you launch your new bid, obviously you want to make sure you're managing and reviewing overall route guide performance. Kate talked a lot about keeping data that will allow us to evaluate which lanes are performing, which lanes are potentially underperforming. And when you see those underperforming areas of your network, you want to make sure you're fluid. You don't want to just have an RFP that runs once a year that's, as we say, it's set and forget about it, but you actually kick off the RFP, you get the good carriers and rates in place, and then you need to do maintenance and management of your overall network to make sure you're getting that optimal performance. So where there are areas of degradation, Think about leveraging technology to help execute more seamless mini bids, get repricing in place, and keeping that network fluid. In addition, you may have net new lanes that pop up over the course of the year based on a new customer that you start working with or based on a new set of lanes that arise. Also thinking about where you can leverage technology to quickly reprice those lanes, make informed decisions, and get carriers locked in on those parts of your network. And then the last thing as well, and I think it's really important, when we're talking about procurement, yes, you have the RFP, yes, you have mini bids, but you also need to think about how this tooling fits into your spot tooling as well as an organization. So really thinking about covering all three of those areas with technology can help drive performance improvements for your network and drive efficiencies. So this entire concept of building a more efficient procurement marketplace was one of our, I'd say, leading drivers to building out Uber Freight Exchange, which is Uber's new proprietary procurement solution. We really aim to bring the neutrality and transparency of a market such as the New York Stock Exchange to the freight procurement market. We want to give shippers and carriers the tools they need to really get the best outcomes for their network. On the shipper side, you obviously want to make sure you're getting connected with the best capacity in the market. You want to make sure you have visibility into the options that exist in the market. And obviously for carriers, they want to make sure they're maximizing their utilization, growing revenue, and really building sustainable relationships with their shipper partners. Uber Freight Exchange Contract, which is the product that I directly oversee, was a product we brought to market about a year ago. Since it's launched, we've had a lot of great traction, and it's helped shippers, run smarter, faster bids, really by consolidating the workflows into a simple, easy-to-use tool that not works only well on the shipper side, but is also really seamless on the carrier side as well. We want to make sure that when you're deploying technology solutions, it's not just the shipper product that needs to be great, but you also need to have a really great carrier product to minimize training or any time dedicated to really facilitate that change management. And we think we've really done this with the Exchange Contract platform. This product is available officially to all shippers who are interested in leveraging a RFP tool that will help them run more efficient mini bids and RFPs. And this was publicly launched at our Deliver conference just this past September. On the spot side of the house, we've been revamping our spot experience as well, introducing Uber Freight Exchange Spot. For any of our TMS shippers that are on the call, this is getting rolled out globally to all TMS shippers over the next several weeks and months. And we've already quoted tens of thousands of spot loads through this product. And shippers are being able to tap into features that they previously didn't have, such as upfront pricing, really leaning into structuring accurate load details and load requirements. Kate talked about this, but in these products, we want to make sure that carriers know exactly what they're bidding on, making sure they can validate those equipment requirements, and making sure they can ultimately provide the service levels that you're expecting. And then we'll be deploying even more innovative features over the next couple of weeks, such as evaluating opportunities, at least on the spot side, for carriers to provide alternative dates or times to have a delivery. So if you have flexibility on those loads and you have a carrier where there's a good fit for that network, they may be able to request an alternative date and identify cost savings for our shippers. So overall, this is a product suite we're really excited about and continue to have really great traction with our customers on. And just a couple of things that I would love to highlight, I think I'm really proud of on the Uber Freight side of the house is, we've been a company that have been building end-to-end logistics technology solutions for a long time now. We really believe in building simple, easy-to-use products that let our shippers, launch and analyze and award freight in a more seamless manner. But also, and I've hit on this, is we really have the ability to connect to one of the largest tech-enabled carrier networks in the market as well. And building that technology that is easy to use on the carrier side also helps achieve better outcomes and solutions for our shippers. And then the last piece, obviously, we have in-house expertise when you need them through Nathan's org and through Kate's org. We just have a ton of operational and strategic procurement expertise that can help you think about your network potentially in a different way and in a way that can drive better outcomes and savings for your company. So with that, actually, I think we have one more slide, and then we're going to kick it over into a demo. The last thing I really want to highlight is Tosca has been an amazing shipper partner for us. We've been partnering them very closely on the exchange front for over a year now, and they joined us on stage at our Deliver conference this last September, and really gave us a good testimonial about the benefits that they've seen from adopting Uber Freight Exchange, both on the contract and the spot side, to help them make more efficient strategic decisions within their procurement, and it's really been essential to their success. So with that, we are going to do a quick demo of Uber Freight Exchange contract.
For a shipper to kick off an RFP, they'll first click Create Bid Event. They will then determine when the bid will be open and when the bid will close. They will next determine when the rates will go into effect once that bid is over. The next step in the process is for shippers to upload any lane files or add any lanes manually for which they want to collect rates on. I will use a simple drag and drop function to add 10 sample lanes to this bid event. The next step in the process is for shippers to add any documents that carriers must acknowledge. I will skip this part of the process for the demo. Next, shippers will determine which carriers they would like to invite to the bid event. I'll select these top 3 carriers that I have loaded into my system. I'll click Next. And the last page of the process is reviewing all the lanes that have been added that shippers want to collect rates on, along with the carriers that have been invited to the bid event. Upon clicking Send Bid Event, the bidding window is now opened and the invites have been sent to all the carriers. I will now pivot over to a carrier screen where we can see where the new pending invite arrived. I'm now logged in as a carrier. I can say I have 1 pending bid invite. I'm going to accept this bid invite, and I'm then going to input a couple of rates into the tool. As a carrier, I'm also able to download the bid file in its entirety, input data into Excel, and then upload that Excel file into the tool as well. For the purpose of the demo, I will just bid on these top 3 lanes. Bids have been submitted. And if I come back to the shipper view, I can now see that Chris's Trucking Brokerage has submitted their rates. I can see exactly when they viewed the bid event, when they accepted the invite, and when rates were ultimately submitted. And I can now move on to the assignment part of the process. I can go into the lane details, see all my carrier rates in one single place, can input a counteroffer if I would like to negotiate the rate on the lane. I can input the capacity that I'm going to assign to the carrier. And then with a click of a button, I can send that assignment out to that carrier. If I pivot back to the carrier view, on refreshing the page, I see that I've been awarded 1 lane, 11 loads per week, and I've been counteroffered from $1.70 a mile to $1.65. If this looks good to me, I can confirm the assignment, hit accept, and now the shipper will see that the top lane is accepted. Once all data is collected and assignments have been sent out, shippers who utilize the Uber Freight TMS can actually export their data and the results of the bid directly in the TMS, which will then update the shipment routing guide as well as the rate maintenance file.
So with that, I guess just to conclude the exchange contract section before I send it back to Nathan, the big things that we want to just highlight around exchange contract, which is available to everybody, and you can find more information online, is once again, the really simple 3-step process throughout the bidding process to launch your bid, upload your bid file, leveraging a lot of easy click and drag options. You can track your carrier bid activity in real time. So no longer are you having to jump between different email threads, follow up with carriers on one-off chains to see if they've seen the bid, if they've downloaded the bid file. You have a real-time dashboard that tracks every step of the process that the carrier's through, so you can see exactly who's accepted the event, who's downloaded the bid file, who has rates drafted, who's uploaded their rates. And then at the end, we also have the ability to negotiate bid outcomes, make sure you're getting those ideal cost savings, and award the freight through the tool, and also export it into the Uber Freight TMS with the click of a button. So it really consolidates that entire process end to end, helping you as a shipper make smarter, faster, informed procurement decisions with data and insights. And with that, I'm going to send it over to Nathan, who's going to talk a little about the road ahead as we move into 2025.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, Kate, Chris, that was great information. And like Chris said, we're going to make sure to send out the deck and the demo. I do want to call out too, if there's any questions, we do have Q&A on the right of your screen. If you have a question to ask or anything to discuss, please drop it in there. We've got a few already that we'll run through here. But overall, again, thanks for joining us today. As a wrap up, just to hit on these top best practices again, evaluate your network, have a multi-pronged procurement strategy, provide carriers with accurate ship data, establish that routing guide to get it, archived in the system to make sure everything's tendered correctly, and then find the right tool for your organization. And I think that's really what we tried to show was just there's a lot of different tools to use. We have a lot of different tools here at Uber Freight, whether it be a giant RFP or a lot of the mini bid repairs or something in between, right? So we have a lot of tools, a lot of different options from large to small bids. And so yeah, we hope that if you have any questions or you have any interest, we'd love to hear from you and talk some more with you. So I will jump into Q&A with the team. Like I said, please, if there's any further questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat there. So one question was just about the broader webinar on, hey, is this just for companies who have a established procurement department and process, or is this for companies that are just kind of starting out on that procurement journey, right? And I'd say it's definitely for both and all the above. I think we tried to show that just from the breadth of procurement options and procurement knowledge that we have. I think with that, if you're an organization and you're just starting out on that procurement journey, I think it's probably worth your time to chat with Chris a little bit on the exchange to see where that can help. Kate, from a consulting standpoint, if you're just looking to start from scratch and you need some help, maybe some outside help, we'll have that option as well. So yeah, this is hopefully able to encompass all of the needs, whether it be just starting out or a very robust network from that standpoint. Another question was that we just hit on. We're definitely going to send out the slides and the deck and the presentation and everything, so everyone can go back and review and potentially come with questions at that point. So I will pause there and see if there's any more coming in here.
I'll just say, I think Chris had hit on a good point about trying, developing technology to make it more efficient for the carrier and the shipper. We know that a lot of the shippers are trying to do a lot more with less people, and the market changes so drastically. We can have really high highs and really low lows. So anywhere where we can alleviate any manual work and provide those efficiencies and that ease of procurement, that's what we strive. That's what we're striving to do. And I think whether if it's Exchange or Jagger or whatever tool you do decide to use, just leveraging that technology to help minimize those manual processes and make help your teams get out of the manual work and focus on other project work.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I think, hey, Chris, one question that we've had is just around the carrier sentiment and the carrier ease of use. I know you hit around it a little bit, but I know you've done a ton of research in that arena. So maybe there's some folks that have that question around, like, how's this going to land with my carriers if I use a new method or a new system? So maybe if you don't mind, just talk about some of the work you've done with our carrier partners.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned this, but I think when you're thinking about implementing technology, yes, the shipper experience with the technology is really important, but equally as important is the carrier experience. When you're deploying a new bid and you're changing your process, you want it to be intuitive and simple for the carrier to get in, understand what they need to do, and you don't want to be fielding 100 different questions from your carrier partners if they aren't familiar with the technology. So I think that's something that we put a lot of pride and focus into on the Uber Freight side, is just obviously the experience, and I came from the Uber ride sharing business even before my time at Uber Freight, but just experience in building simple, easy to use, intuitive platforms that anybody can log in, understand what actions they need to perform. That's something we really strive for at Uber Freight. So overall sentiment with Exchange has been very positive from our carriers. I talk to carriers at conferences. We do research sessions with the carriers all the time, and overwhelming feedback has just been, it's actually not any different. It's easier. They know exactly how to log in. They know how to input their rates, and really, it helps simplify things on their side as well. Because once again, they have that shared source of truth with the shipper. They can go back. They can look at exactly what they submitted, when they submitted. They can see if there was negotiation that took place or were adjustments to rate. So you have that really clean audit trail. So I think both on the shipper and carrier side, feedback has been really positive. And one other question we were also seeing, and it's a question I commonly get from customers as well, but what are the first steps to start to think about improving or making adjustments to your transportation procurement processes? I think oftentimes there's some concern around the amount of work or effort that may be required to make adjustments. I kind of answer that in two ways. One, you could always talk to one of our experts on the Uber Freight team to understand and better dive into the network to see where there's opportunities to make that first step. But the other thing I oftentimes tell shippers is that you don't have to do a big bang approach. You can identify small areas of your network to try to leverage technology, to try to implement some incremental changes. So if you have a new set of lanes that maybe pop up that you need to get priced out, think about leveraging technology to execute that smaller bid event. See how it works, see how it improves your efficiency, and then identify opportunities to kind of implement technology more broadly across your transportation and supply chain.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, so a couple more questions came in that I'll run through, and please, we have some more time, so keep adding if you have interest. So one question we had was, how do we, from a procurement standpoint, identify a good carrier partner, especially where they maybe haven't done business with Uber Freight, and we don't have a lot of data in our network, right? So good thing is with 120-something thousand carriers, we actually do have quite a bit of coverage and data that we're able to vet out and give customers feedback across our network. We get that question often of like, hey, this carrier is new to us, what does it look like? And so we can go and mine our network to see how they're performing, and also their power lanes and all the volume and all that. I'd say when we don't have a carrier in our network, we have some other vetting that we do up front, right? From a contractual standpoint around, what does the carrier's financials look like, safety risk, safety score. We're having conversations with a new carrier, right? How long have they been in business? And so we're doing a lot of like the basic vetting and then understanding their business before we would, contract them, right? So hopefully that answers the question on, when we're doing carrier selection and different methods of how we vet our carriers. So it's a good call out that you got to kind of do a little more background work when you don't have the data right at your fingertips, but we definitely have some avenues to do that and vet our carrier base.
Yeah, I would just add to that too. You could always send out an RFI to ask them these questions as well to vet through them, right? Number of trucks, number of power units,
yep.
Telematics, who are their top 5 customers, just to really understand more of who they are and their capabilities.
All right, we had one come in on ocean. So what do the ocean rates look like from Asia to North America, and kind of was it possible to maintain the current cost? So we will have to give you a follow-up on that one. Unfortunately, you don't have the ocean team on this call. We do have a very robust international and ocean team that deals with the steamship lines, the air freighters, and so on and so forth, that has a good handle on rates. So as a follow-up, the questions that we maybe don't get a good answer to, like this one, we'll make sure to get a follow-up back out to you with a good contact to speak to. And I think, any more kind of last call for Q&A before we wrap? Okay. Well, I mean, just in conclusion, thanks, very much. I know everybody's time is very valuable, so we appreciate you, spending 40, 45 minutes with us. We know you have a ton of stuff to do and you're very, very extremely busy. So again, appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us. And then of course, any follow-up questions, we'll get you the correct links and all the documentation and the recordings and the PowerPoint as well. So as you have questions, if you rewatch it, please make sure to reach back out and we'll be in touch and get you some answers. So Chris or Kate, any final thoughts before we wrap?
No, thank you for joining. And like Nathan said, if you have any questions, even about procurement strategy, about carriers, about RFP strategy, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to have a phone call and just brainstorm and discuss with you.
Absolutely. I would echo everything that Kate and Nathan said, but appreciate the time, everybody. As we know, you're very busy and we hope this was valuable. Once again, if you are interested in exploring Uber Freight technology in more detail, we do have a QR code also on the screen you can scan. You can find more information on our website, sign up for a demo online if you'd like to follow up, but we appreciate the time.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.